Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to the first episode of High Energy Entrepreneur Radio Show on the iNETrepreneur Network. I'm Donna Guinouard, and I'm glad you joined us here this afternoon. Today, we have 3 awesome guest speakers to learn from. But before we get to that, please be sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure you bookmark your networking activities at ntevents.net. and like us on our Facebook page. The iNETrepreneur Network is where entrepreneurs, business owners, influencers, and experts come together to talk about their challenges and their triumphs, from their tragedy and their impact. Let's get behind the stories and learn from their perspiration and inspiration. And by the way, today I'm also joined here with Robert W. Jones, the owner and founder of Network Together. Robert will join me from time to time periodically as the guest host. Robert, are there any notable announcements for our guests and members?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, what's really exciting is this is really our first public show that we've had on the iNETrepreneur Network, and I'm really excited about having our guests here today.
I am too.
But I'm also excited about the magazine that we have coming out. We've had 3 issues so far, our iNETrepreneur magazine, and right now our magazine is open for business. It's a place where entrepreneurs can share their stories with others. We have it on downloadable format from our website. We also send it out to 17,000 subscribers. That's 17,000 subscribers, and you can flip through our magazine in a digital format. And lastly, what I'm really excited about is our NT Events, that's ntevents.net calendar, where entrepreneurs can go to get seen in virtual Zoom rooms that are nationwide now.
And be safe.
And be safe. Yes. So, we're really excited about, some of these things. So I'm really excited about our show today, Donna.
I am too. Thank you, Robert. So I'm really excited today to introduce our guests. In the first segment, we're going to have Shawn Jones. I want to brag a little bit about.
Well, I'd like to brag about Shawn Jones too. I mean, she started out as a networker and then she changed into my wife. So,
but she's an awesome networker.
Absolutely.
So Shawn is the CEO of Network Together, which is the largest independently owned, non-franchised networking and business organization in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And that's Network Together's tagline is notorious. It's where Network Together is where relationships create community and commerce follows.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Shawn is not only the CEO, but she is a huge supporter for kids in the Valley and donates her time with such organizations as DECA and as a former foster mom. Mm-hmm. So she's very involved with our kids, which is awesome. That's our 5th pillar in Network Together is serving our youth.
Another thing about Shawn is when she came on board with Network Together, I had to give up my day job and come and get on board of Network Together as well. It went from a hobby to a real business. That's one of the most exciting things about Network Together.
Yep. And she's also, Shawn is a huge advocate for women and is the driving force behind putting on all the women's networking events through Network Together. And we host those twice a year, and they're very impactful and very informative with all different types of women in businesses. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Shawn on.
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Good. Thank you so much, Donna and Robert, for inviting me on the show today.
Well, thank you for being here. It's exciting to have us virtual.
Right?
Right? It's the safest way. So before we get into all the nitty gritties, I'd like to ask a few things about your background. So where did you grow up?
I'm born and raised originally from Las Vegas, Nevada, where I'm 3rd generation native. I've been here in Arizona for over 14 years now. I do consider Arizona my home. I moved here because I love the outdoors and I love how Arizona is really focused on people. In Vegas, we keep everybody at an arm's distance. And that was one of the things that really attracted me to Arizona was the people and the culture.
Right. Or they keep you in the casino, one of the two. Whatever works. Great. And then what did you do in Nevada before you moved here?
So my background, I've always owned service-based companies. I co-owned one with my mom that we had for many years. We had multiple divisions and over 280 employees. Those divisions included both residential and commercial house cleaning, floor care for strip wax. We did carpet cleaning, high ladder services, windows, and catering.
Wow. And how old were you when you did all that?
I started my background in that industry when I was 13 years old, but I owned my very first business on my own at the age of 8 years old. I had a car washing business that I used to wash all the residents' vehicles back then. And it was because I wanted my own money. I wanted to have some freedom. And I knew that at such an early age of 8.
I love that. I love that. And how did you get more involved in your industry? So you went from owning your own business, and now here you are, the CEO of the largest independently non-franchise networking group in Arizona.
Yes. So that's a good question. A dear friend of mine years ago, I found myself in a change of life. I was pregnant with my son, got laid off from a corporate job, the first one I ever really had, because I've always been self-employed. And Mindy, who's still a good friend of mine, she invited me to an all-women's networking meeting. And I thought, what do I do? And so I remember pulling into the parking lot, and I have my hands on the steering wheel, and I'm thinking, what am I going to say? How am I going to do this? And I was actually scared. And for me, if you know me, you'll know I don't fear easily.
Right.
And I thought about it, and I remember just looking into that review mirror, and I'm going, you know what? The worst case, I stumble. Oh, well. And I walked in, and I watched what everybody was doing, how they were talking. I noticed Mindy came over, and she was introducing me to others. I learned about commercials, and I thought, wow, I can do this. And at that time, being a single mom and pregnant, I embraced networking. So anytime I was invited places, I would go, whether it was a leads group, a referral group, a personal development group, I was there. And I just learned having others build my virtual sales force. That was awesome.
Yeah. And a lot less expensive than taking out commercials on TV. So,
right.
I'm curious because I know you personally, but the audience doesn't. So tell me, from being age 8, what did you learn from then to going into your networking industry business now? What is 3 of the most important things you learned at that time to bring you where you are today?
Being true to yourself, delivering a clear message, embracing others and their differences, and always being a referral source. Even if you don't receive a direct benefit, if you position yourself as a resource center for others, your business is going to come right along by its side.
Awesome. This is one of my favorite questions, especially from somebody with your experience and your power, because you're a very powerful woman. What would you tell young 20-something women who are thinking about, especially right now, obviously, a lot of people are out of jobs with where we're at in our new normalcy. So what would you tell them to do to get started in a business? What would your advice for them be?
The first step, throw everything out that everyone's told you as to why you can't do something, because that is actually your open door to show them that you can. Look at what others, first identify what industry, what is your passion? How can you make money with that passion? Seek others out that are in parallel industries or complementary industries. Find mentors, and they're out there, and look for that help. And don't be afraid to ask for it. And then the next step is, even if you have your own fears, you put them in the back and you just move forward.
I love that. One of the things that, of course, being a network together, that I love is I feel that people who come in who are new into networking, owning their own business, I feel that it is a very safe space for them to learn and grow. And that's one of the things we embrace in the leadership of Network Together, is it's okay to fall and stumble, and everybody's there to help you. And I totally agree. I think in finding that safe space is critical to your growth and empowerment.
Yes, I thoroughly agree. I also personally feel that you have to jump out of your own comfort zone. And that's where your growth kicks in. If it feels uncomfortable, you're doing something right.
Right. And continue to be uncomfortable. Yes, continue to be uncomfortable. So tell us a little bit about some of the activities that you personally are behind. Well, you're behind everything in Network Together, but let me narrow that down a little bit. But what, like the women's events and how you help with the children in the Valley, both. I know that we've done organizational drives that you set up for some of the poorest zip codes in the Valley to help with shoes and coats. What are some of the other things that you behind and a driving force in your passion?
My passion's really, I have a couple of core areas. One is definitely by far our children. You know, my daughter's adopted. I was that foster parent. I've been an advocate for children for a number of years, working with the court systems and other nonprofits. And anytime there's an opportunity that affords me to be able to help rally local businesses and communities to help support those kids, whether it's the basic everyday necessities or learning opportunities, I'm there. One of my favorites is every year I volunteer for J.O. Combs Unified School District, and I help with their mock interviews every year. And teaching kids, giving them the opportunity to interview. And they have a chance to ask me questions directly. And it's incredible, because through that opportunity, I've learned one of the greatest weaknesses our children have today is the inability to communicate face to face. So even if it's just that 10, 15 minutes of them being able to talk and have that experience, I go home knowing that I've made a difference in somebody else's life. It gives them enough to go, wow, I can do that, and have that self-confidence.
Right. I was just going to say, the children of today are more computer-centered, phone-centered than we ever were. You know, we grew up having to write out our applications and go on those.
Yes.
Yes, it's not, email it in. We actually had to go and drive around and do that.
Absolutely. And we have partnered with nonprofits around the Valley where we do go into those zip codes. And the kids, you don't think Arizona as being a cold state, but what happens is when our weather does change, those children that are in impoverished areas, if they don't have the proper clothing, whether it be the jacket, the long sleeve, or the shoes, they won't attend, and they're at a higher risk for a dropout.
Absolutely.
We work with other nonprofits. One of the things that we've done in our own organization is we open the floor for parents and business owners to bring their children into our chapter meetings. And as long as they're of, a reasonable age, 8, 9, 10 on up, typically your teenagers will attend. We're helping them to develop confidence by actually speaking in front of a room. They get introduced to each and every person, every business. They learn about different companies, and it helps give them a guidance into their upcoming futures.
I love it. I love it. I know we've had several in our expos, our big event that we put on, 4 times a year?
Yes. And we open the door that if there are teens that are able to attend the events, as long as it doesn't interfere with their school, they can be volunteers, and they are partnered with our adult volunteers that have businesses as well, and they get to shadow, and they have their own tasks, and they're held to an accountability standard. And it's really neat because some of those kids would never have an opportunity to go work or volunteer outside of their own family, their own church, and sometimes their own school.
And be around other adults of varying businesses.
Correct.
I love that. So a couple questions. What do you do when you take off your entrepreneurial hat? What's your downtime?
My downtime. Well, I'm a big outdoors person. Robert always jokes when we were dating. I told him one day I was going to go home to my own house and I was just going to relax. And I later sent him some pictures as I had a chainsaw in one hand and I had knocked out the cinder block planter that came with the house and dropped a couple of trees in the front yard. So anything that allows me to get my hands dirty, and I love to work with power tools. I know, kind of sexy, right?
I love them too.
Between high heels and power tools. But for me, getting my hands dirty and creating something from the ground up, that's really like building a business. You get to see every aspect from beginning to end.
Right? I love that. I love that. And what's your greatest inspiration?
Oh, my greatest inspiration. My greatest inspiration, I would see, is watching others really adapt. Adaptability to me is an inspiration. Somebody has that one story that they were just at the very bottom and they tried everything they could and they finally saw the light at the end of the tunnel.
I love
that. To me is my inspiration.
I love that. And, our women's group.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about the women's groups that you are the power behind making that happen.
So our women's groups are usually panel events that we have a couple of times a year. The panel are all females. There's usually about 5 questions, and it's really centered around where they started, where they're at, how they came to be along the way, and what they recommend to others that are in that room. And we have about 80 or so people that come together, and the audience is a mixture of both men and women. And we open the floor for the audience to ask those difficult questions. And I love it when men attend, because oftentimes they ask those questions that us women, we want to know the answers, but we may not have it in us to raise our hand and ask. And the last event that we hosted, I had half the room nearly in tears from the comments and the panelists that we had, because it touched so many at that right time in their lives. It's about coming together, boosting each other up. You hear that the thing, elevate the women around you. Well, it's not just elevating, it's really touching the pain points and showing them that you're not the only one. Here's some resources, here's some support, here's the mentors that you're seeking. You're not alone.
Absolutely. And if I can add, being at those events, one of the things that touched me the most was when a gentleman came up to me and said, I wish I'd known you were doing this event, Donna, because I learned so much from you and the other women that I wish my daughter was here, my young daughter, 19, 20 years old, that it would have benefited them so much. And to hear that from a male to, a female about what we do and things we have to go through in our lives to get where we are, and that he wanted that to pass that on to his daughter, I thought was a huge, huge compliment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We always welcome all of the women's events. We do allow the teen young ladies to attend with either a parent or friend of the family, because they also receive a lot of benefits and inspiration from attending.
Absolutely. And learn so much that, if we can teach them as older, wiser women, and we can teach them some shortcuts, what a blessing that is for them.
Absolutely.
What a blessing. So Shawn, where can people get in touch with you?
The best starting point is to go to our website. The first link is networktogether.net. That's networktogether.net. That's a link to our direct website. It gives you a lot of information about the who, the what, the when, the where about Network Together. If you're only looking for the list of events and meetings and happenings around, then a direct link is ntevents.net. That's ntevents.net.
And what, in your words, are some of the best benefits. I mean, I know what I could say about Network Together, but what do you see from your 30,000 foot view as CEO for people coming into the different networking groups we have?
I would say the number one is the strength among the community. Whenever there's been a member in need, it's amazing how many other members come together to be there, even on a personal level. That's when you know it's genuine. It's not all about the mighty dollar. It's about that personal, the relationship side. Number two would be the exposure that a business can have both in person, online, through tools that are available, because Network Together it's both an in-person platform for businesses and entrepreneurs to meet, connect. I always say high five in person, but then we also have our virtual. We have, outside of our weekly meetings, we host masterminds. That's where someone can really dive into their business and get the tools that they need. We have a series of events that we host, whether they're mid-size to large-size events. We joint venture with partners that they bring in tools and resources for our community. We're the only one like it in Arizona.
I love it. And tell everybody who's listening a little bit about our education committee behind Network Together.
Well, I'm just going to say, and I'm probably biased, but they are rock stars.
Right? They are.
They are, they are. And our Network Together trainers, our education committee, they are all volunteers. They all have their own businesses, all have their own key strengths, and they pull on that. Our head of the chair, Katie Evans, she writes a lot of the curriculum. She collaborates with Robert Jones directly and her team, and they deliver that content at these local meeting levels. Those are our mini masterminds within the networking meetings.
And they're extremely valuable. And
they are.
I've attended some, obviously, over and over again, and still learn something from them. Well, Shawn, I appreciate you so much being here on our first episode. Again, please let everyone know how to get in touch with you.
Wonderful. You can reach me at networktogether.net. Check out our calendar at ntevents.net. Our phone number's on our website. Chances are, if you give us a call, you'll reach me directly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Donna.
Okay. And our next guest is none other than Jeremy.
All right. So we'll turn yours off.
Jeremy, how do I say your last name? I'm always.
All right. So give me 1 second. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Beautiful. Yeah. We just had a little sound thing going on here, but we're good to go. How are you, Donna?
I'm good. Jeremy,
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Oh,
so,
my pleasure.
Jeremy, I want to brag on you for a little bit, if I could. So
I'll tolerate it. I'll tolerate it. All right, we can sit back.
You are the owner of Ethos Shift, and I love your tagline. We are in this world together, and we need to lift each other up.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's beautiful. One of the things that Jeremy is involved with is he volunteers with OCJ Kids. And he's also a big volunteer with Nick Lowry's Champion for the Homeless. So obviously, Jeremy, you have a big serving heart.
Absolutely. I had a company earlier. And I tell you what, money wasn't motivating me. It wasn't getting me out of bed. I couldn't figure out what was going on. We live in a society where they tell you, hey, you got to have the biggest house, the shiniest car, all these other wonderful things. And going after that just did not motivate me. What I found motivated me was serving. Really getting out there, helping people in the community. It excites me. I love bringing smiles to people's faces when somebody's having a down day, and then I can just talk with them. I go to strangers on the streets all the time and just start talking with people randomly. People that know me, I speak a lot. So most of them are probably like, will this guy ever stop? But when I'm out on the streets, it just really serves me because I love people and I love connecting with people.
I love that. So before we get too much into that, I really would like to have a little background on you so that we kind of know, who you are. So where were you born and raised?
Okay, so, well, that's kind of a long thing, but honestly, I was born in Bremerton, Washington. My father moved me to Pensacola, Florida. He was a Navy guy. We had the big storm of '78. I think that was the world warning everybody that I am coming. So yeah, from 1 till 4 years old was in Florida. Then I lived in Uniontown, Ohio, little suburb area.
Go
We have
Bucks.
country. Say what now?
Go Buckeyes.
Absolutely, Buckeyes. And I'm a huge Cleveland Browns fan. Yes, we do exist. We're real. We're not leprechauns. We're out here. But, as part of a small town, you kind of grow up in an area and you're always getting into trouble because there's nothing to do except for cow tipping. So that's kind of where I grew up at. Then I moved to Illinois and went from there.
Okay, that's awesome. And then how did you get involved in your industry?
Oh yeah, that's so again, grew up, I was an awkward kid in school and got picked on in school, and then I had a father that had a very bad temper problem. And so I had no outlet in life. I was a very, very, very angry kid, lashing out, always fighting. I was in and out of juvenile detention centers, psychiatric units, and hospitals. At 15 years old, I purposely overdosed on pills trying to commit suicide. 18, I was living out of my car. 19, I was involved with a robbery. I was a getaway driver in a robbery that went bad. Ended up doing 10 years in prison. After that, I got out. All I could do was find a job bouncing in bars. I was getting bottles broken over my head and stuff for $50 a night. And it just wasn't worth it. At the same time, I was going to this little church that sent me notes or letters while I was in prison towards the end of my time. And so I felt obligated. I went there. There were some troubled teens that were there that were looking up to me. I don't know what the heck they were thinking, but they looked up to me and they were asking me for advice, and I started speaking into their lives. And then I had other churches calling me up, hey, will you come and talk to our teens? Sure. Then other churches, will you come? And it just became a cycle. And I'm going, next thing you know, I'm on stages talking to teens and then adults. And then I'm going everywhere, talking on stages out in Illinois. And it was really good. I ended up leaving the bar industry. I started a limousine company from scratch, had 2 old limousines during this process, and I built up to an entire fleet. The craziest time with me speaking was with actually a group of bikers. I was at the state fair, and it was thousands of bikers, and here I am in a midget wrestling ring. I was the halftime speaker in between the shows out there. And that was the most awkward. That was kind of crazy, but it was really cool when I got done. I had all these bikers come up to me like, man, brother, that was just so awesome that you came up there and spoke. And it was really cool. Anyway, so the limousine company ended up, I started in '08. I was barely keeping my head above the water. And then in 12, I had to shut the company down. I went through what I call my Forrest Gump phase. I was trying to figure out who I was. So, so as you imagine, so I picked up this cross and I carried across the length of Illinois from northern Illinois, started Rockford, all the way down to Alto Pass, Bald Knob Cross, giant 110-foot tall cross in southern Illinois. Got done with that. Then I went to New York, walked through New York with a cross, some of Ohio on the way back. Really an awesome time where it was a journey where I was discovering more about myself and really getting out on the streets and being able to connect with people. And there were so many stories I could share, hundreds and hundreds of those. Those will be at some other times. We're not going to get into that. But shortly after that, I was having chest pains at 35. I went into the hospital. They said I had 90% blockage in my coronary artery. I had 5 stents put in, and I had a small stroke in the hospital. Completely transformed me. I went from Hercules to weak as a kitten. My identity now again was thrown out the window. Here I was. I couldn't pay bills. I became homeless. Started getting my feet under me. I was working for non-emergency medical transportation, and I actually got to talk with other people that were going through the same situation. They're like, I've worked with my hands my whole life. Now I can't. Who am I? So it was really incredible because where I went through, now I was able to relate and talk with these people. And I was starting to get back under my feet. And then I got this phone call that my mother passed away. Out of the blue. One day I'm talking to her. She's fine. The next day, your mom's dead. whoa. So I flew out here to Arizona to take care of my father, who was sick at the time. We had that bad relationship, as I was saying before.
Right.
And honestly, when I came out here, a part of me was like, why didn't my dad die first? Why couldn't have I spent this with my mother? That was kind of my thinking, was that his relationship and I, we were so bad. And it was World War III again when I came back. But
Searching time.
yes, absolutely. And after time, he and I actually became friends. We were able to finally get over those hurdles before he passed 11 months after my mother. And so
you had mending time.
It was a mending time, and there's a lot of healing that happened that wouldn't have happened if he would have been the first one to pass. And so it was incredible.
Missed opportunity, Jeremy.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we were talking about, with your mind frame, when you look at the world and something seems negative, but it's actually a positive thing. We could go on about that with the journey that I've been along. But I started this company called Gimme Giveaway. I really loved it. It was a sweepstakes marketing app I developed. I got to learn a lot about the networking industry. I got to get really familiar with the camera and get to know people and make connections. And the problem that I ran into was that I started this business without healing from the loss of my parents. I was covering my emotion up, and it just started coming out more and more. And honestly, I started just falling apart mentally, and I just couldn't keep it together. I couldn't understand what was going on. And finally, I just stopped with everything. I ended up hiding from the world. Everything fell apart in the world. I couldn't understand. I was chasing after this money. I thought that was my dream.
Right.
And as we discussed before, it wasn't motivating me. Finally, I made the decision. I said, I need to share my story with people again. I need to get out there. And once I really, in my heart, committed to that, all of a sudden that energy came back, that second life. I mean, just so much. And now I'm driven, and it's going, okay, what can I do to help people in the world move forward? I've seen so much negativity, so many people. You get on these forums and it's negative this and that, and people at each other's throats, and so much going on. Well, one of the things that when I was doing when I was doing Gimme Giveaway was I got to work with a lot of different nonprofits. I got to see people that were giving back to the community, and it was so awesome, and it was inspiring. And I decided, you know what? I need people to understand they have the power to change themselves and change their community. So I started Ethos Shift. And that's what we're all about. We're sharing stories. We're sharing with people that have overcome different obstacles, or people that are just doing wonderful things in the community, to inspire people and motivate people to get out there and do it themselves. Because each and every one of us has the power to make a difference. We just need to understand that and go out and make it happen. So that's kind of everything in a nutshell that's led up to where I'm at.
Awesome. So I'm really curious. You have such incredible volunteering. You volunteer and help with children, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've done a little bit with OCJ Kids. There's a lot of groups that I've done some stuff with. I just did an interview with Stephen Webb on Ethos Shift yesterday. People can take a look at that. Awesome story with that and what they're doing in the community. I got to meet up with Nick Lowry. He was the all-time leading scorer for the Kansas City Chiefs. He does this thing called Champions for the Homeless, and they have homeless people come in during Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, all this other stuff, and they bring football players in. And honestly, I go for the cheerleaders because he brings the cheerleaders in. It's really awesome. But you get to sit down at the table and you get to talk with people, and that's a time where a lot of people do that. And but one of the things, I also work with this Hemp Legacy Foundation, and I know it has nothing to do with marijuana. This lady, Heidi Hemp, her last name, and she understood the play on words. Awesome spirit. She had a brother that had an addiction, was homeless. She went out to give him items and help him out because, it was hard to have him in the home. And then she started giving stuff to other people and finding more needs. And next thing you know, she was getting on the phones and connecting people that had blankets, and she was going out. It got bigger and bigger. And she started helping organizations like Teen Challenge, the Phoenix Dream Center. I mean, all these different organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And it inspired me because I actually helped her out at Christmas time. We fed 4,000 people and gave out 10,000 toys at this event. And she's not a huge organization. This is just a lady that's driven, and she has just a few people that help her out.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's incredible when you see that, the power that an individual has to change thousands of lives.
Right. I know that I've talked with several of my friends who were saying, I'm cleaning out my closet and I have all these old purses. What do I do? And I said, oh, those are perfect. You get together a bunch of items that homeless people need, homeless women, personal items, fill the purse up and go out and either drop it off or, at a center and give them out that way.
Well, I don't know if we should just stick to women. I mean, a good purse will set my eyes off. So, I can make that
work. My color, Jeremy.
Only color. Absolutely. I will only stick with Prada or something like that when we get it donated. But yeah, absolutely. It's little things like that we don't even think about. But there are so many people that have needs out there. Little things. One of the things that's honestly basic hygiene things, especially for women. The feminine hygiene products, they're in short supply on the streets out there, and they're sorely needed. But volunteering doesn't just mean that you have to go donate items or you have to scrub dishes in a back room for some place. Volunteering could be, hey, I am just going to spend time and get to know people. Just letting people know they still matter. Because when there's a point, and I have been homeless a couple times, and you get to this point where you feel you don't exist, like you don't matter, that you don't have a purpose in this world. When somebody comes along and says, hey, you do matter, I acknowledge you're here, I'm going to spend a little time with you. It's not opening your purse. It's not doing anything like that. It's just saying, hey, you do matter. That means a huge difference for a lot of people in the world. That is a make it or break it, and you never know what you could do.
It really does, because it brings the balance back in their life that they're missing, that energy balance, and it brings that back into their life that they're missing. So real quick,
Sure.
I'm just curious. So what do you do when you're not working?
Oh,
what do you do for downtime?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't even know. It's just that this kind of consumes me. On my downtime, I'm sitting here looking at stories of people that have been motivating other people, or people that have been getting out in the community, or I'm on Facebook talking with other people, and it seems just like it's a part of who I am in my world. Even when I'm going out, and let's say I decide I'm going to go to the park for a nice stroll, next thing you know, I'm talking to people. I'm getting to know who they are, and people just start pouring their problems out to me. It's incredible. Everywhere I go, and I don't mean to. I don't go out with the mindset I'm going to do this. It just happens. So, that's what happens most of the time. And then when I get truly tired and I just need to turn it off, well, then Netflix, I think, like everybody else.
Okay. All right. That's okay. Yeah. I mean, in my business, I tell people, find something to make you relax and get outside of what you do, and whatever it is, relax, because that is a healing process. Jeremy, I want to thank you so much for being on the show and sharing with us your ethos shift and your volunteer work and all the hard work you put in to help our community and our planet be a better, productive, more loving place. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. I greatly appreciate that, and letting me talk to other people out there. So again, thank you as well.
Real quick, where can everyone get a hold of you?
You can go on Facebook, go to Ethos, Ethos, and then a separate word, Shift, SHIFT. Don't use the phone numbers that you see on bathroom walls. Those aren't real numbers. That's not how you get a hold of me. Just go to the Facebook page and look me up. And honestly, if you have any questions about anything, don't hesitate to give me, ask me. And if you're at a spot in life right now where you feel like you're just at the end of your rope and you don't know how to go forward, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but feel free to message me, and I will try and connect you with people that can relate more with you, that have overcome some of these things. Because again, as she said, the tagline that I have is that we are in this world together and we need to be lifting one another up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
All right. I'm excited to introduce our next guest is Brian K. Wright. Welcome, Brian.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Do you have your volume up? Where's my volume?
He sounds good.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can barely hear you. I wonder what my volume is.
It's there somewhere. Well, while you're
we got it. We got it.
okay,
Ta-da.
I'm really excited you're on the show, and I'd like to take a few minutes to brag about you.
Good.
So, Brian is the owner of Success Profile magazine, and he's also radio owner host for Success Profile Radio, and he is an author as well. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know that Brian does is, and I think it's exciting, is that Brian helps people write their book. He helps you find your story and get it out there. And Brian is different. I've known Brian for a couple of years. And one of the things I love about you, Brian, is that you give people choices. You give them choices. You can say, I can show you how to self-publish, which is a little cheaper. Mm-hmm. Or I can show you how to publish, Library of Congress number and all of that, right? Mm-hmm. And you give them the choice.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a connection to a publisher. One of my books was with Morgan James Publishing. And if someone does aspire to have a publishing contract with a New York publisher, I can make that connection if that's appropriate.
Right.
People do sometimes like to self-publish. And there are reasons to do either one. For example, self-publishing, your book gets to market faster and you have a lot more creative freedom. The advantage of being with a publisher is they have connections, distribution connections to get into bookstores, but they want a whole lot more input because it's their baby too.
They want a lot more control.
A lot more control, and it takes longer to get to market. You might want to count on 6 more months than you would as a self-published author. I've done it both ways, and there are advantages to doing each one.
Right, and disadvantages.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I want to get into that in a little bit, but before we start, I really want to hear a little bit about your background. So where were you born?
I was born in Decatur, Illinois, and when I was 9 months old, my dad took a job back in Iowa where my family originally was from, so we moved to Iowa, and that's where I grew up. I grew up in a little farming town called Northwood, Iowa, so just 4 miles south of the Iowa-Minnesota border. Ended up going to Iowa State to major in communication studies, and then went to graduate school to major in adult education. I got my master's in that. And I taught public speaking, English composition, and business math in a college environment for about 4 or 5 years. And you might wonder, wow, that's a very eclectic set of classes. Well, the commonality was they were all required. Mm-hmm. So I saw everybody at least once before they graduated. It was a small school, topped out at 450 students. And really enjoyed that experience. It was a year-round school. It was a 2-year school, and the classes were 6 weeks long. So every 6 weeks, you start over with a new set of classes.
Nice.
You met for 2 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. So I always had a 3-day weekend.
That's cool. Awesome.
That was very awesome. Now, the drawback to that is you had to spend time outside of work grading and preparing your classes, and you had office hours, but I enjoyed the whole experience. It was really fun.
Yeah, my father was a professor at ASU, so graduate level psychology.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I also did some resume writing while I was doing that, so I had a side gig even then. And then we got a director of sales who, for whatever reason, did not believe in Yellow Page advertising. This was still all pre-internet. This was in the early 90s. He decided to cancel our Yellow Page ad. And so our enrollment went from 450 down to 250 in about 8 or 9 months. And when there are fewer students in class, you can probably also guess what the demand for the teachers at that school would be. So
economics.
Right. And so my job got phased down to part-time, and I was offered classes as they became available, and eventually not at all. So thankfully I was resume writing. So I just ramped that up to a full-time thing, ran a bunch of Yellow Page ads in a bunch of local Yellow Page books and surrounding areas. So I was in Lincoln and a little town called Wahoo, Nebraska, and Hastings and Grand Island and Kearney. And I don't think I was in Omaha at all, but Nebraska City. So I focused on some of the smaller ones, places that weren't really being served by resume writers. They call this number, oh, it's in Lincoln. Oh, I don't have to meet you in person. We can just fax things back and forth if we need to.
Right.
Again, pre-internet. So we could fax.
I was going to say, so explain that to our younger generation.
Oh my goodness. Fax machines.
Yeah, we didn't have the quick ability technology that we do today.
Fax machines, you basically stick your piece of paper into the machine. It feeds through like you're making a copy, except it electronically transmits that information to a machine somewhere else. And as long as that machine had a piece of paper in it, it would copy that data onto a piece of paper and print out for you on your side.
Oh, and it made such a great noise, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. When you called a number that was a fax number, it felt like it was screaming in your ear. Oh, it was just awful.
It was horrendous. It really was. So that is awesome. And then how long did you live in Iowa before you moved to Arizona?
Well, I lived in Iowa until I was 23. Then I lived in Nebraska for about 8 years. And so I moved out here in 96. So next week is actually my 24-year anniversary in Arizona, believe it or not.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I arrived on April 10th, 1996.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And any regrets moving here?
No, I like it here. As soon as I made the decision to be a little more active, to meet people, I've met some really fantastic people, and joining Network Together was one of the best decisions professionally that I think I've ever made, because I get to meet some really amazing people on a very regular basis. And there's some very talented people in this group.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, Network Together is just a vast majority of people in every industry you can imagine, who all have such passion and bring something to the table.
Yeah. The meetings are great. And I love the fact that you can attend, even now virtually, any meeting you want if you're a member, anytime you want. And so you don't have to travel to Goodyear. You don't have to travel to Scottsdale. You don't have to travel to Queen Creek. You can just all these.
Don't pick on Scottsdale.
Oh, no, I love Scottsdale. You're moved way further north, though. You're further north.
Yeah, it is a little further north.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I run the Scottsdale chapter of Network Together.
It's probably, and this is the God honest truth, it's probably my favorite chapter in the whole organization.
Oh, thank you.
It is. It's the one that I go to most often.
I love that. I know we've had you there as a guest speaker, and man, you should see everybody writing notes down. You know, getting all the information on what you need to do to be a writer.
Yeah.
So, how did you decide to do your own radio show?
That's really interesting, because I had a little bit of a background in that, and I'll go all the way back to high school. I was approached by the speech coach when I was a freshman in high school about trying out for the speech team and going to speech contest. I was a little anxious about that. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to. And she said, take the rule book home, read a description of what all the events are about. And I didn't have homework that night. So that was my homework. So I read the rule book, and there was one event that stood out to me. It was called Radio News Announcing. And the thing that really impressed me with that event was I didn't have to face my audience in person. So very much like we're doing, I'm in one room, you're somewhere else.
Right.
Except I didn't have to see anybody. It was just a microphone with the sound pumped into the next room. And the guy sitting in front of me would hold a flashcard. You have this much time left. Now you have this much time left. Now you have this much time left. You had 30 minutes to prepare a 4 to 5 minute radio newscast. And so you were evaluated not only on your delivery, but on which stories you picked and what order you put them in. So you were evaluated on the whole package. And I got a 1 state. And I thought, this is great. Let's do this again next year. And my coach said, you can't. I said, why not? Because if you get a 1 state, you have to pick a new event. So now I had to pick an event where I had to face people. Fast forward, I made All-State my senior year. So I ended up getting decent at it and competed in college. And then fast forward several years further to my current radio show. I was approached by somebody at TogiNet Radio, which is where I'm on. I've been there since January 2012, but I had a friend tell me, you need to have a show. You've got a great message. You got a great voice. I think you do really, really well. And after I thought about it for a little bit, I'm a Taurus. I don't always decide quickly, but once I decide, I'm all in.
Right.
So I started my show, and I interview amazing, high achieving people and learn what their secrets to success are, what they overcame, and the lessons we can learn from it. And from that, I had a whole bunch of content that I could repurpose in a lot of other areas. Eventually, I started a radio show or a magazine, Success Profiles Magazine, which I started in December 2017. And I repurposed some of that great content into a couple of books. And you held up one of them just a little bit ago. Success Profiles Conversations with High Achievers, Volume 2. That's the one you have. That one went to #1 on Amazon in multiple categories.
Awesome. And so I know, because I know you personally, Brian, but a lot of our audience who doesn't know you, I would love for you to give you permission to name drop some of the people you have interviewed, because honestly, he has interviewed some, I mean, we're talking the big fish, right? If you will. Yeah.
Darren Hardy, who published Success Magazine for years. Jack Canfield has been on my show. I had Mark Victor Hansen on my show a few weeks ago. Stedman Graham, Chris Powell from ABC's Extreme Weight Loss, Dan Locke, Sharon Lecter, Laura Langemeyer, Debbie Allen. Upcoming interviews with Dr. Joe Vitale. Dr. John Martini's been on my show twice. He's coming on again in the near future. John Asseroff, Dr. Dennis Waitley is coming on my show very soon. And just some amazing people. UFC fighter Rich Franklin was on my show. Jonathan Horton, who competed in gymnastics for the U.S. Olympic team. Gosh, where else can I go? Brad Sugars, who runs Action Coach, the largest business coaching organization in the entire world. I had Dane Maxwell on this week. His book is called Start From Zero. He helps people go from nothing to $1 million businesses. In fact, I asked him, how do you know when you should start outsourcing things? Because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we want to do it all ourselves.
Right.
Said, how do you know when you should outsource? He says, when you decide you want to have a better life. Oh, okay. That hit me hard. I already do outsource all my graphic design work because I do not have skills. And that's really critical, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you are not good at. So just make a list of things that you are not good at or you don't want to do anymore, and then find someone you can hire who enjoys doing those things a lot.
Right, right.
And outsource that stuff one at a time. Don't try and outsource all of it at once, because you won't outsource any of it very well. So pick one thing, find someone, train them, onboard them, make sure they know what they're doing, and then go to the next thing on your list. This is also something I don't want to do anymore, or I'm not good at. Find someone to do that. But don't try and do it all at once, because you will be miserable, and so will the person you hire. And that's not fair to anybody.
Right, right. And to be fair, it isn't just huge, star jet, names that you interview. You interview a lot of people who are all over the board. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I love stories of people who have overcome. I love the underdog story. It's really cool. I mean, I've talked to people who have experienced bankruptcy. I've talked to people who have experienced divorce and failed marriages. I've talked to people who were homeless, sleeping in their car. But here's the thing, none of them ever gave up. They always found a way, and they always focused on their why. They always focused on their purpose. I've met and talked to people who have been in the hospital with life-threatening illnesses or conditions, and the doctor told them, you may not live through this, or you may not walk again. Well, these people that I interviewed rejected that, and instead decided to think about, what do I have to look forward to when I'm out?
Right.
Baseline assumption, I'm getting out of here and I will walk again. In fact, one of my guests not only walked again, but he ran a marathon on all 7 continents.
After my 3rd brain surgery, I had 3 brain surgeries in 14 months. And I didn't realize it at the time, but of course it was, I was busy also raising teenagers, but it was so traumatic that it messed up my speech. And for anybody who knows me, that was difficult, because I couldn't remember simple things like a pen or a glass or a paper. I mean, and it wasn't once in a while. This went on for over 2 years. Wow. And it finally went away, but it was just so much all at once within that 14-month time frame that my brain just was like, okay, stop for a minute. But it took a little bit, and it was difficult for me because I found it embarrassing, that I couldn't get the word out, and people look at you, and then I just say, I'm sorry, I had 3 brain surgeries, and it's a little slow coming back.
Sure, absolutely.
So I get it. So I'm super excited because you also do your you also tell us a little bit where you are, and let me get this in the camera. There we go.
iNETrepreneur magazine. I'm the editor.
Yay!
So Robert has asked me to be the editor. We've done 3 issues now, and the next one's going to come out, I believe, in May. So we're about 6 or 7 weeks away from that. And we're always looking for people who like to create content. So reach out to Robert Jones. You saw him at the beginning of the show.
Absolutely. And understanding that when you put your story out there, you are giving the credibility and the exposure of who you are and the expert in your field.
Absolutely. And reading these articles every month, I'm just really impressed once again with the caliber of people that we are working with. And if you're reading this magazine, certainly there's going to be a few articles in every issue that you resonate with and think, oh, I need to learn more about that.
Yeah. And or get a one-on-one with that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And one-on-ones are great.
Okay. So real quick, what do you do when you are not working?
I like to read.
You like to read.
And I love to listen to audios on YouTube. If I can find a full audiobook on YouTube or anywhere else that I've wanted to read or listen to, I do that. One of my favorites that I like to listen to is called The Aladdin Factor by Mark Johansson and Jack Canfield. It's about the power of learning how to ask for something.
Oh, interesting.
It is, because a lot of people are afraid to ask. And there's a whole section about why do people not ask for stuff. There's also discussions about how to ask and how not to ask. I mean, first of all, ask the person who's capable of helping you. Okay. If you're trying to get to the CEO of an organization and you're asking the gatekeeper for a favor, that person usually doesn't have the power to say yes. They only have the power to say no.
Right.
So be very aware of who you're asking. Be very respectful of anyone you talk to, because they may have a connection that you may not know about. I mean, if I didn't know you, I would want to be really nice to you because I don't know who you are. You might know the CEO of your company. Right. You might be their direct assistant and I would never know. You might be his wife and I would never know. If I was horrible to you, guess who's going to hear about it?
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So real quick,
yes.
Brian, before I wrap up the show, where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. My website is brian@briankWright.com. And you can see how my name is spelled, BrianKWright. So Brian@briankWright.com is my email, and BrianKWright.com is my website. You can see what I'm all about, and you can message me through the contact form if you're interested in talking about writing a book, if you're interested in doing a magazine yourself, because I edit magazines for other people. I create magazine features for people. And I also have my own magazine success profiles magazine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do for everybody, for Network Together. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Donna. It was really an honor and a privilege to be here with you.
It's great to have you here.
Thanks.
Wow, what a show. So I want to thank each and every one of our speakers who came on today.
Great first show.
Yay. And the members and guests of the audience. And, I realize that we are all super, super busy, but you took the time to join us. And I want to thank you so much for that. So one thing I would like to tell you, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Bookmark your networking activities at ntevents.net and like our Facebook page. And for more information, you can go to networktogether.net
because
we network.
Because we're here to bring people together,
That's
entrepreneurs,
right.
So they can get the attention, they can get the attraction, they can get the clients and connections that they deserve.
That's right. And next week, our guest speakers are Donna Spiracco, your legal plan advocate of Legal Shield, Patty Mamalis. She appreciate your expert with word power postcards. And our third guest is Jackie Zaccoli. She is the networking guru and founder of Network Builders of Arizona. So tune in next week. We'll see you then.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.